Okay, welcome back. So I think the clock on the computer is a little bit slower. That's why for the delay. So we're going to talk a little bit more on the photo polymerization process. Before getting into the business, let's talk about this paper presentation. We all agreed in the first week, right? So just to remind you, we're going to, each of you will have the chance to present the topic of your choice, right? So you can do some literature research and find out 2 to 3 pretty interesting literature that is related to 3D printing, right? Not necessarily the 3D printing process, right? It can be related to the materials, to the application, or a new process, right? So it's not limited. You can based on that those papers, right? There might be some related paper published on that topic. So then you're going to prepare a 30-minute talk. That is, you're going to use the PowerPoint just like this, right, for pretty formal presentation, right? From the background and the motivation, right, overview of this technology or the material, what's the motivation of this work, right? And then what's the technical approach, right? For example, what's the material, what's the process, right? What kind of challenge they have. So what their limitations and applications and future work, right? All of those you can find it out really easily from academic paper, right? So it's always organized in that way. So you want to make your presentation interesting, informative, and answer important questions, right? So before doing the presentation, I would say 3 days before your presentation, you have to send your papers, right? Your literature, the related papers, as your main references. You have to show to me, and I will send those papers to all of you, and you can pre-read those papers to prepare some background knowledge and also some questions you want to ask for after the presenters. Right? So that's a process. Right? You will each, apart from that presenter, right? Anyone else will have to send me 2 questions a day before, just a day before, so that you can ask it during the presentation, after the presentation. So initially I scheduled it at the end of February, but I feel like we took a little bit more time for the introduction of different processes, right? And because of snow. So we'll start from end of March, actually next Friday, right? So I start from February 28th, and we will have 3 days of presentation, and each day we'll have 2 presenters, right? It's good enough for 2 presenters, including presentation, discussion, right? So you can sign up on this sheet. I pass it around. If you have your preference and really strong preference, right? You can try to sign up earlier. Right? So the dates is February 28th, March 6th, March 13th, March 20th. Right? So it's all Fridays, starting from next Friday. So you're following 4 Fridays. You can check your calendar to find out the appropriate time for you. Okay, pass it around and you can find it out. It doesn't matter if you sign up more than 2 for 1 day. If that's the case, right, we have to shift it, move around a little bit. we hope don't have more than 2 presenters a day. Okay. So that's the arrangement for the paper presentation. Any questions? I know this format is kind of new, right? But I feel like this is a great way to find out new information and share it to ourselves, right? And it will also stimulate discussion, and it's a good practice, right? Yeah, you can sign up right now. Yeah, you can sign up later. You can pass it around. If you're not sensitive of our data, the presentation date, right? You can sign up later. So that's it, right? If you have questions, let me know. We do have another week to start it. So this is the paper presentation. Right? Each of you, it's an individual presentation, not a group presentation. Right? Okay. So I would prefer you guys to search for some newly published papers, right? Some highly impact papers. You can tell it from what kind of journal it published, right? How many citations they have. If it's a pretty new paper, right? The standard for citations is you have to change it a little bit, but you can tell from the quality of that presentation of that paper, right? Because that affects the quality of your presentation. And for each paper, you can find out there are a lot of references for one paper, right? If you're not clear about what kind of particular statements in that paper, you can refer to the reference, to their own references, right? Maybe that's a reference you want to put it for your presentation, right? And for technical presentation, probably it's new for most of you. For technical presentation, the most important thing is to be accurate, right? You want to make really accurate statements, right? Get really accurate conclusions. The audience will ask you questions, really trivial questions, right? So you have to understand the most details of it. And also for all the figures, right, tables, you have to list the reference, right? You have to list the reference where you get those figures from. I didn't do it really well. I tried to get all the reference for my figures for this class, but sometimes it's really hard to achieve that way. But for that technical presentations, I think it's easier for you guys, right? You can easily get it from papers. All right? Good. Okay. If you have questions later on, you can approach me and you can come to my office. Right? So just to remind you the project, right? This is the I get these slides from the first class. The project it just need to be directly related to additive manufacturing. Right? You can include modeling simulation, the solid mechanics modeling, right, or the chemical model. Right? And it's a group project. You have one partner. So in order to make it going smoothly, I will encourage you to discuss the topic with me. But this is a chance to propose your topic. So that's we'll have it on March 3rd. Right? So all of you will have a really short presentation for your proposal, right? So for that proposal, you have to slightly talk about this overview, right? And mostly on your motivation and your arrangement. So it will be around 5 minutes presentation. a few slides is good enough, right? So mostly you will have to decide what kind of topic you're going to do, right? And then midpoint and final project recommendation. Because we don't have any exams, right? So I want you guys to focus on more on those. Okay. Questions? No. Okay.
Also, the March 13th, that's when we have spring break for the presentations.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
Do you want us to bump, like, cross that out and bump it to?
Yeah, to the following Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't. Yeah, I think this project I took in account of that spring break. Okay. What about this due date? Do you guys find it good for you guys? I think some of you are seniors, right? May the 1st, is that good for you? Good. Okay. All right. So let me know if you have questions. Right. So now we want to talk a little bit more in detail on photopolymerization. We had an overview introduction on those SLA or skewer lithography processes. Right. This is based on the photopolymerization process. Right. Basically, you use the light to simulate the cross-link of monomers, polymer monomers. Right. You have this. This is also called a vector scan or SL, skewer lithography. So this is by using the scanning galvanometers to scan the laser, right? To write a pattern on the in the photopolymer vat. Right? The other another type of skewer lithography process is the mask projection. Right? You have a DMD, which this is the core part in the projector. Right? You kind of project this image at one time, right? So you have one polymerization layer, layer by layer, right? Not line by line. Right? And the third one. So this is third, right? I'll put that counting. This is called the two-photon polymerization. It's a really interesting process, right? This was my topic, my first research topic back in 2006. So you have a two really strong laser, right? Usually pulse laser, and then have a focus point in the middle. So you don't need to move the platform. You kind of build from the platform, but you don't need to move the platform. You can move your laser spot, right? Because the two-photon polymerization only happens at this focus point, right? So you can solidify the resin in the middle of this whole in this light, right? So this is really interesting one, and you can get a nanoscale resolution, right? Usually around 100 nanometer resolution. Okay. So you're already familiar with that. So we want to focus on the material photopolymer and how those photopolymer cross-link, right? How the photopolymerization happens. So for commonly you see those photopolymers are usually use UV light to cure the polymer, right? But depends on your photo initiator and your monomers. Other kind of radiations can be used to initiate that polymerization. You can use gamma rays, X-rays, electron beam, UV, and visible light. Right? So they are all possible. Photopolymerization is not a new technology. Right? It happened vastly in semiconductor industry. Right? Really common use is the mask projection. Right? Mask projection to get your pattern on photopolymer so that you can use that polymer as a mask to etch your wafer patterns. So that's not special for polymerization, and you always use a lot of cases you use UV light, but also electron beams, right? And in order to get a really high definition, really high resolution, now I think that for the semiconductor technology, getting down to 8 nanometer or 8 or 6, right? That's really small, and you have to fight against that diffraction. So you have to use a really short wavelength of light, right, or radiation, that is X-rays or gamma rays. So, but for our 3D printer, you don't want to make $100 million of machine, right? So nowadays we focus on UV light and visible light, but in the future, those are all possible, right? In the stereolithography system, like the vector platform, right? Usually you have the UV laser for the radiation, and for the mask projection, it's a DMD-based system. So some systems use UV light, and some systems try to use the visible light for the radiation. Right? So you see a lot of desktop SLA printers, they use LCD, right, or cell phone screen, right, to satisfy that photopolymer. So that is based on visible light, right, visible light radiation. So it depends on how sensitive the photopolymer is engineered for the wavelength, right? And then you can choose that wavelength. So polymer, this is really basic on the polymer, right? For the structure, we have linear structure, right? Polymer chain. This is a branched polymer chain structure, right? And usually those linear chain and branched chain structure is a polymer structure for thermoplastics, right? And this is the cross-linked structure, and this is usually for thermoset. For photopolymerization, is mostly cross-linked structure. Therefore photopolymers are usually thermosets, right? So what's the difference between those properties between those thermoplastic and thermoset? If you apply heat, right, thermoplastic can be melted, but thermoset cannot be melted, right? So that's the difference. So for this thermoset, you cannot use FDM to print it out, but have to use the SLA, right? So for the polymers, epoxy resins are pretty commonly used, but it has its own problem, right? Because epoxy resin, the photoreaction is relatively slow. You don't want to print it in a really long time, and also the final results, the product is brittle. You can tell from your epoxy glue, right? So in order to increase that part strength, a lot of cases people add in some acrylate polymer into that epoxy resin to help forming a stronger or robust structure. And also epoxy is sensitivity to humidity, so that's also a problem. For the photopolymer, if you want to make your own polymer, right, or your own resin, you will have to make your polymer sensitive, right, sensitive to a certain kind of light. So this photo initiator is the one who can absorb light, right, absorb photons, and then start the cross-linking process. Monomers, right? Monomers is the building block for your polymer, right? Reactive dilutants, flexibilizers, they are used to stabilize, and also the stabilizers. They're used to stabilize your resin, your mixture, and also tune the viscosity of your resin. You want your resin to be relatively low viscosity. Right. So, apart from your printing process, right? So the photo initiator and the liquid monomers are critical for your photopolymerization process, right? The idea is if you when you have a liquid photopolymer, you have monomers. Oligomers is I will show you an example for the oligomer. Let me jump to that. This oligomers also display as the fundamental bricks, building bricks, with the monomers to bond together, right? And for the initiators, it's only to help those, to promote those bonding, cross-linking. Then you can see it forms the 3D cross-link shape. So this is two main types of photopolymer right now we're using for most of the resins. One is the acrylic, the other one is epoxy. Resin leather is not as common as those two. So for photopolymer reaction, polymerization reaction, right? There are two kinds of polymerization process. One is called a free radical, and the other one is called a cationic. We'll focus on the free radical for just for example, right? The free radical is the process that when you absorb, when that photoinitiator absorb the photons, they will create that a free radical linking point, right, for to start the photopolymerization process. But cationic, you can tell from the name, right? They create that cation. This is for the cationic. You have to get a salt for to start that polymerization. Not similar to it's not the same as the radical process. Okay, I can show you the example for free radical. Let's jump this. Okay, so for the free radical formation, right, when you have this phonons, this P stands for phonons, and this is initiator, and then you will form by absorbing this phonon, it will form this is so-called free radical with the energy that can link to the monomers. So this free radical can link to this monomer, right? To initiate this for initiator and monomer, right? And this initiator and monomer linkage can link with other because it have a free radical, right? This has a free radical, and then this one can link to another monomer, right? And so on. So and this is a macro molecule, right, with a radical. And this can also link to more monomers, right? If you have enough monomers for the reaction, right? But sometimes it can those reaction will be terminized because this free radical will be linked by another initiator. Maybe linked by another chemical to stop that process. Sometimes oxygen, right? And that's a fundamental process for the carbon, right? They use oxygen to stop that polymerization. Right. So the idea is quite straightforward, but for that cationic polymerization, they use the salt, type of salt, to absorb that phonons and then have a cation, free cation bonding, and that free cation bonding initiate that the bonding to your monomers. So that's quite straightforward. We'll only focus on this free radical, for example, okay. So this is one example for the initiation, right? We have monomers, right? Those are monomers, and this is called oligomers, right? Oligomers. And if this initiator absorb UV light, you will break up this bonding here, okay? And this bonding will connect to this monomer, and this bonding connects to the other monomer. And then break up this one, another one. So this is a little bit more complicated than that basic. And this is a basic process, right? For this basic process, you only have one monomer, no oligomer, right? Right? You know how it's happening? Breaks up this bonding process. All right. So based on this process, right, you can choose different kinds of monomers for your polymer. I'm not going to focus on the different choice of monomers or oligomers, but you can choose from a good selection of those families. Right? Of course, it will. Based on different kind of monomers, you can get different polymers. Therefore, the process will, the product will be, will show different mechanical properties, right? So I got this sample from Stratasys. The company recently focused on steering lithography. So you see, this is for the applications for in the interior of vehicles. So they try to mimic that laser top grain and also the dashboard. So this is only by stirring lithography. So you can take a look at it. For the surface finishing, is I'm not quite sure how it works, right? But I think it may involve two different materials, right, for different colors. But I think the base monomer are the same. So why we want to learn this photopolymerization system? Because we want to find out how what kind of parameters can control this process, right? How fast this process can happen, right? And what's the reaction area, impact area for your laser processing? So first of all, the photo initiator system is to convert this physical energy into that chemical. So that will relate it to what kind of wavelength of your radiation will be absorbed, right? So that's mostly related to the type of photo initiator you're using, right? Depending on your process life. And they can be this photo initiator. They can be either radical or reactive catalytic process. So that solely depends on what type of photo initiator you choose from. And monomers is a building block for polymers, right? So it will affect the mechanical properties or the appearance for your final product. And also, you want to find out what the polymer chain, the molecular weight of your polymer chain, right? And how those monomers are interconnected. Right? So there's another type of a new type of polymer network. This is called interpenetrating polymer network. This is formed by two different monomers. Right? So you have one type of monomer, right? This can form a polymer network, and then you have another polymer network. This is based on the strategy to increase the property to overcome the disadvantage of epoxy polymers, right? Because those epoxy absorbs water, is brittle, and the photo reaction process is a bit long, right? So a lot of cases you add into another polymer the acrylate into that epoxy network. So then you will form this so-called interpenetrating polymer network. If you know the term copolymer, right? Is there any difference between this network and the copolymer? As far as we know, copolymer also use two types of monomer, right? Or more. If you have two types of polymer, two types of monomer to form this chain, right? A long chain, that is called copolymer. Right? So then for copolymer, in one single chain, polymer chain, right? You have different monomers interconnected, right? So that forms the polymer, the copolymer. For the interpenetrating polymer network, those chains are entangled, but they are not connected, right? They're not. They don't form covalent bonding between them. Right? So they just mechanically entangle together. So that's the difference. But a lot of cases, when you form that interpenetrating polymer network, you may get some of the copolymer in that system. So this will have the advantage to tune the property of your polymer, right? It's similar to how you engineer a composite, right? You have two different kinds of polymer chain to help with each other. So, oops, going on. Oops. All right, the system don't want me to continue because we're going to focus on equations, right? Okay, so this is the one. Let's see. So we just covered how this photopolymerization process starts and how it took place, right? We want to know how fast it is and what kind of parameters affect your process, right? Because we have different ingredients in your resin, right? Most importantly, we have monomers and initiators. So monomers that stand for M and initiators stand for I here. Okay? So we have the term that is called the rate of polymerization. This is RP, rate of polymerization. That stands for how much monomers are consumed. So that can be calculated by the differentiate of monomers over time. Right? It's related to the rate of the polymer consumption, and that is proportional to monomers and initiators. And here we have the K constant, that is a function of radical generation efficiency, rate of radical initiation, and the radical termination. So that is this constant of K that is related to the types of your initiator, right? Because that will controls all this radical generation and initiation and termination, right? So that's based on the type of initiator you choose from. So here the monomer, this is the concentration of the monomer, right? Or the overall monomers you have. This is the amount of initiators exist in that system, right? So we start from this equation, right? We try to calculate. We try to find out how this rate of polymerization is controlled. In your resin, right? We have most of the resin made of monomers. So the monomers, the density of monomers, or the concentration of monomers, is at its maximum, right? So the photopolymerization is actually only controlled by the photoinitiators, not by monomers, because monomers made up the majority of your resin, right? So they exist anywhere, right? That makes sense. But photoinitiator, if you use epoxy, right? Epoxy glue one big part, right? You have two tubes. The smaller tube is the actually the contains initiative. It's really smaller compared to the monomer. Right? The monomer tube is much larger. So you want to control the initiative, and this is the average, the equation for the average molecular weight of polymers. This is the ratio of rate of propagation and rate of initiation. So how to determine the average molecular weight, right? Because average molecular weight that will be related to the length of your polymer chain, right? And therefore your overall mechanical properties, right? And you know, this is the photopolymerization is a dynamic process. You have initiators absorbing UV light, the photons, and then get this free radical. And free radical reacts with monomers, right? And then grow into a long chain macro molecule, right? And that macro molecule has to be terminated by another initiative, right? So this is related to the rate of propagation. If you come to this diagram, right? So this is the rate of propagation, right? You attach more and more molecules, these monomers, right? But still you have the free radical. But this free radical has to be terminated by another initiator radical, right? So if you have a higher rate of propagation, you will have a larger, higher molecular weight, right? If you have a higher rate of termination, you will have shorter length of molecular chain, right? Or lower molecular weight, right? So that makes sense, right? So that's the this is the ratio of those two, right? Or ratio of polymerization, or rate of polymerization, rate of initiation, right? If you have a higher rate of initiation, you will have higher concentration of free radicals, right? And that is related to the concentration of monomers, and inverse related to the concentration of initiations, right? Initiators. So those two equations governs the process, right? Any questions? No? All right. So if you have a higher rate of polymerization, that means you can build the part faster, right? Those monomers can be cross-linked much faster. And that means if you you have to control that means you have to control this photo initiative, right? The concentration of photo initiative. Now the monomers. I think I can jump through this process because we already covered. Jump through that. So for most of the machine, you have different subsystems, a recording platform system to move it, and batch system, optical system, control system. So this photopolymerization system is mostly controlled by the batch system and the optic system. Right? So of course, you have to adjust your control system to make sure your photo polymerization process is complete, right? So, and also the platform system is affected by that photo polymerization because you have to determine what's the thickness of each layer, right? What's the thickness of each layer, and then you can change the. You have to tune the movement of your platform. So that's related to all your process, because that's the reason those equations are very important. So we just covered that photo polymerization process, but those photo polymerization are all initiated by light, right? By photons. So if you use now we want to focus on the stereolithography with the laser, with the UV laser. It may not be UV laser or other wavelengths. We want to find out the light intensity and how does that light intensity related to your to the reaction, right? So first of all, we have to see what's the light intensity distribution if you point your laser, right, for your laser spot, right? You have to analyze that laser spot. So this is the irradiance of your laser spot per unit area, right? You see, if you have one laser spot, it's not uniform, right? So this is uniform laser spot in XY in the XY coordinate system, right? But if you want to talk about that photo formulation in the 3D, you have to find out this power in XYZ, right? So you see this direction, right? So we want to find out that. So 3D is not easy to analyze, right? So we want to focus on this 2D first, and the relation between the 2D with 3D is the this Gaussian based on this Gaussian distribution, right? So what's the Gaussian distribution? If you have a Gaussian distribution, you will have this light intensity distributed in this way, right? Right, or in this way. So this is the Gaussian distribution, right? And it is the relation is by the it's positional of z in the z-axis, right? This is the distance of z-axis. dp is the penetration depth. So if you have a higher penetration depth, right, you will have higher intensity in the z direction, right? So then we can just focus on this power, the radiant power of xy, right? Z that is staying in the zero at the zero location, right? So that at the surface of that photopolymer of that resin, right? So that's the that's the power of xy, right? Let's see power of xy. This is the laser spot, right? And you move the laser spot in the x direction, right? And this is the velocity of vx. Okay. So this is the y direction, and your resin is underneath. In the z direction, is underneath. So this xy is the surface of your resin. You want to find out the intensity, right, at an arbitrary location. If you stay on the xy coordinate system, you want to find out here or here, right? So let's see if you find out let's try to find out the intensity at that location. It's based on the Beer-Lambert law for the radiation absorption. Okay. So based on that law, right, we have the intensity xy. Let's assume this H0 is the intensity or the power in the middle, right? So that's the highest intensity. Okay, and that is that one has to multiply the exponential of 2x squared over W0 to 2, and this is related to the x, right? This is related to the y, and their Gaussian is based on this Gaussian assumption of the laser intensity distribution. Okay, let's assume this is true. Okay. Then the intensity, the whole power, right? This is the intensity over a unit area, right? So the power will be you need to do a integration over the area. So that's the laser power. You can also calculate the total laser power in this spot. So that's a relation with that. Okay. So now we all focus on how we calculate this. How we calculate the intensity, right? Because we know the laser power. That's the power you get from your laser, right? You get the laser power, then based on that laser power, you calculate this intensity in the middle, right, at the middle point. So that you can substitute this intensity at the 0 point with that equation for xy, right? Substitute back into this equation 4. When does this last end? 12:20? 12:35. Okay, sorry. So this is straightforward, right? You can get this intensity in the xy, right? Just by substituting in that equation 4. So if you want to find out the photopolymerization, you want to see how much exposure you have to that to your polymer, and that exposure is related to how much photons you're actually absorbing, right? How much photon energy you're absorbing. So this exposure is actually the energy per unit area. Okay? So energy per unit area has to be calculated by, this is the intensity, right, of unit area. The intensity multiply the duration, right? That's energy. So you have to do integration of the time, right? Exposure time at that point. So if you have exposure, this energy per unit area exceeding a threshold, okay? if you exceed that threshold, which is called a critical value, EC, if this is larger than EC, that means your polymer can be cured, right? Okay, so we want to derive the equation for the energy, right? To see how if you can cure your resin. Right? So just do that integration. If you do the integration by the distance, you start from, we have the movement, right? VC, you start from 0 to B, right? The distance B, and do that integration. This is the process to do that integration, because you have x to x squared up here, so you have to do that. You have to not partial integration, but you have to set this one as another variable, right? Set this as a variable v to 2, and then dx will be equal to something related to the dv, right? So this is only to do this integration process, right? There's nothing related to our own overall analysis, right? So just to skip that process, right? We assuming we know how to do that integration, right? We have this energy that is related to the this is the error factor evaluated at x. So what's the point here? What's the problem here is that when we do that integration, right, from the location 0 to location B, you have edge effect, right? So imagine you have one laser spot, right? You have laser spots to solidify a line, right? From this location to this location, right? You start the laser shining, right? And then gradually move to this location. Let's make it shorter, right? Let's make this line really short. The irradiation, and you will start to see this starting point, right? The rounded starting point. If this is not too exaggerated, let's make it in this way, right? You have a really short line. You do the irradiation here and then move to here, right? So you will have a really pronounced this starting point and the ending point, right? So that's not what we want to focus, right? Most of the time you have a really long line for the irradiation. We want to make sure the normal line, is properly polymerized, right? Not those edge effects. We don't want to work on the edge effect right now. So you just assume you have a really infinitely long scanning vector, right? From the infinity small to infinity large, right? To do that integration of the equation 9, right? This is starting from 0 to B, so we change that from the negative infinity to positive infinity, right? And then we can get the equation of that integrated, do that integration to get this equation of this is what is E. out of that many equations, right? It's really easy to lose focus. The E is energy, right? And what does E related to? The energy refers to how much energy of your photons that is absorbed by the photopolymer, right? And that is directly related to how fast of your photopolymerization process, right? And you will have to make sure this energy higher than the critical threshold, right? EC for the polymerization. So that's really important to calculate that this energy. You have to make sure this one is large enough, right? So this is E when X when this is X, right? X equals to 0. This is when X equals to 0 and Z equals to 0. Okay. Let's go back to here. All right. Assuming you have the light here, right? You have the light here. The laser spot here. This is 0 point. X equals to 0. So we're calculating the energy at this point, right? And if you include in this Z, you can get the energy at this point, right? So, but this energy here, right? This point, this spot here, can be affected by the laser spot here, 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 right? As you move from this location to that location, they all have effect to this point, right? So that's why we did the integration, right? Okay. So once you know that P prime, right? That P prime location, the energy at that P prime, which stands for this EY0, right? It's a function of y, right? Depending on how fast, how far you're away from the x-axis. And if you want to find out the intensity at the P location, you want to integrate this Z by the equation 3, which is the E to the minus Z over dP, right? I can go back to the equation 3. Right, this equation. Multiply that. Right. So this is the fundamental general exposure equation. Right? So for any new process, right, you want to know this value, right? And you see for this laser power, right? Power of laser. You can, if you don't have enough energy to satisfy the photopolymer, you can simply increase your the power of your laser, right? Get a big laser. Vs as the scanning speed, right? You can scan it slower. What's the W0? The half width of beam width, right? You can lower this W0, right? That means focus. This, let's see, this is half of beam width, right? This is W0. So if you make it narrow, right, in this way, much narrower, this one will be increased a lot, right? Not mainly by the W0 here, but mainly by the W0 here, right? Right. So that's why for the two photon polymerization, we have a really focused laser spot with around 200 nanometers, right? If you have 200 nanometer versus 200 micron, so that's 10 to the third difference, and the intensity is much higher than 10 to the third. So that's why for the two photon polymerization is much faster. You can scan it fast, right? And you don't require really high intensity of laser. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we don't. I think we're almost to the time, right? So I want to. I know there are a lot of equations and not that straightforward to understand. Right? So I just want to go through this really quickly. So we want to learn how the laser power, right? How the scanning speed, and how does those parameters affect your photopolymerization process. Right? So we want to see the intensity distribution of your laser, right? Because that's the fundamental of your source, right? That's your energy source. You want to know what's your energy source. So energy source have a 3D distribution. So 3D distribution can be simplified by this equation to make it in the 2D distribution. Right? So that makes our lives really much easier. Then we focus on this 2D to calculate, to get the expression of the irradiation in related to as a function of x and y, right? This is the irradiation at the center point. So that means we know this distribution, this Gaussian distribution, and we have to get that this radiation, express this radiation based on the laser power, right? Because that's what we know. You know the laser power, but not the irradiation. So start from this equation, the equation 5, to get the relation of the irradiation with the laser power and the half-width of the laser spot, right? And then substitute to that irradiation equation. And this irradiation equation cannot be directly used, because if you want to justify whether your photopolymer can be satisfied, you have to calculate this exposure, right, which is the energy per unit area. That stands for how if your photopolymer can be cured, right? If you are over that critical value, so you have to do the integration over the time. But here we did the integration of time from 0 to TB. That is the Newton direction, right? So that will include that edge effect, right? We call it edge effect. That you only move the laser from this spot to this spot. For a particular dot, it will be different from moving from the infinity far away to another infinity far away, right? So this location will be more accurate if you do that. Do the calculation from for a long line, right? And then you get this. Do that integration. It's also easier to get that equation. You get that relation, the exposure related to those values, right? Those are critical values you want to study for. And this one, you can easily transform this energy in 2D into a 3D, right? So that would be the irradiation in the 3D. You may ask the question, why we don't have the X here, right? Why we don't have X here? Because X is parallel to the line direction, right? So if you imagine you come from the really far away to really far away here, right? This dot here, dot here, dot here, dot here, dot here, 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 here. As long as this distance is the same, right? This many dots here. As long as this X and Y is the same, doesn't matter what the X location, right? So because it starts from infinity long way to this infinity long, right? But if this is a really short radiation, this spot will be different, right? Okay. All right. So that's all right. I hope you can. If you have a chance, I think it's included in this book, right? All right. Thank you.